Just hold on. Been to places that I'll never go. Seen some faces that I'll never know. I keep dancing, but it's just a show. Whoa. Look up at the sky full of stars. Close my eyes, I only see the dark. Tell myself I wanna seize the night. Alright, and we walk this road together, and I still feel like I'm alone. Just hold on, just hold on, just hold on, just hold on. Together, but I still feel like I'm alone. Just hold on, just hold on, just hold on. And we walk this road forever, and I can never find a home. Just hold on, just hold on, just hold on. Just hold on, keep holding on. Just hold on. Can never find a home. Just hold on, just hold on, just hold on, just hold on.
There ain't no stopping us. Fly without boarding pass. Couldn't catch me, I'll be moving fast. Call me a shooting star. Let 'em know who you are. Flying up in a bar. Wish on a star. Time to show 'em who's in charge. Call me a shooting star.
Didn't even get to cross.
I said I'm moving too far. Get to glass. shooting star. Got more than a couple of people going mad, I swear they're rooting hard. Tell them I'd be big in the game like she went and got them breast implants. I said I'm moving too fast, didn't even get a glance. I'm ready to eat up track like I'm seated in a restaurant. If you had swag like mine, you know it's best to flaunt. We aren't hating because you aren't shining like it's neon, rock like kings of Leon. Shooting stars across the galaxy. I stand out, so don't be mad at me. Infiltrate, I'm with my strategy. When I turn up, then I just have to leave. Shooting stars across the galaxy. I stand out, so don't be mad at me. Infiltrate, I'm with my strategy. When I turn up, then I just have to leave. Yeah, shooting. Yeah, shooting. Yeah, shooting. Yeah, shooting shots. Shooting stars.
Didn't even get to cross.
I said I'm moving too far. Get to glass.
What's up, guys? How's everybody doing? Say hi to everybody first. The last comment I say is this music is pureed. You're damn right that was. I don't know what the hell that was. I just I put on the Spotify non-copyright beats and just put shuffle on it. So this is not, when I start the streams with this type of music, it's not the kind of music that I listen to. It's just the kind of music I listen to, you can't play on YouTube. So otherwise they'll remove the video. What's going on, everybody? How's everybody doing? Can everyone hear me? So first things first, let's get a sound check. Let's get a sound check. Once we have a sound check, we will start it up. Sound is good. Cool. Sound is good. So let me make sure that the stream is looking healthy. Everything is working just fine. Looks good. Looks like we have a few people in here. If we could go ahead and hit the like button. You know, we have to say that in the beginning. Go ahead and hit the like button. If you're not already a subscriber, you're not familiar with who we are. My name is Ryan, also known as Cantor and Clark on Twitter. My partner and I, we run Blockroot. And just before we get anything started, as a reminder, you know, we do these streams because we want to provide a, you know, let's call it, as I've said many times, a non-sensational look at the markets compared to a lot of the other YouTube personalities, we'll call them, that you will see. That being said, none of this is financial advice. We do appreciate all of your support. That sounded funny. Appreciate all of your support. So if you want to go ahead and hit that subscribe button, that'd be great. You could join the BlockRoots family. And the stream is sponsored by Phemex. So Phemex offers contract trading. It offers feeless spot trading, which is pretty awesome. So if you pay a small subscription, I think it's like $9 or $20 a month, $9.99 or $10 or $20 a month, whatever it is, it more than pays for itself in the amount of fees that you can save. And they also offer a yield generating service as well. So this is sponsored by Phemex, all right? And we are just giving our opinions. This is not to be taken as financial advice. You know, I am a full-time trader. I spend most of my time trading BTC. I would say up until the last 4 months, I spent all my time trading BTC, only getting in alts a handful of times, right? Just getting in them, as I said, as they were VC investments, because I didn't know what the hell I was getting into and I was just taking punts. So yeah. All right, so have a good amount of people in the stream. Let me say hi to everybody. Now we have the disclaimer out there. Cornholio, what's up, buddy? Okay, Casil, what's up? Lucian, damn, I actually made it to this one. Trader Mo, looking forward to your analysis. Happy to have you here. Carlos Cifuentes, what's up, buddy? David, what's up? Banks, what's going on, pal? Arian, okay. Rodero, Chris with a beard, let's go. And for those of you guys that don't know, Banks, my friend in the chat, right when Tesla decided they were going to accept Bitcoin, this guy went ahead and bought one. Chris with a beard, let's go. Keld, what's up, man? J.E., Richard Pierce, ship freed from the canal, crypto pumps, and stocks flat. Gotta love it. Yeah, well, there's a lot of uncertainty right now, and I feel like we've been saying that for the last couple of months in traditional markets. A lot of it around what occurred with Wang. The Tiger Cub with the massive margin call and liquidation. Yeah, Michael Brand, we went over that. The music is pure AIDS. I would love to play like a mix of the Rolling Stones, Wu-Tang, some Incubus. You know, I have a really eclectic taste in music. Some classical music you could get away with playing. Swift Academy, what's up? Okay, been looking forward to this. All right, so how's everybody feeling about this move up today? Yeah, so Shroom is looking really good. Thank you, D. Ross. Thank you, Ross. How's everybody feeling about the market today? We're gonna go to the chart right now. We'll take a look at everything. You guys can still hear me nice and clearly, I'm assuming. How is everybody feeling about this? Visa will start settling transactions with crypto partners in USDC on Ethereum. You know, there is so much divisiveness that is in crypto between ETH maxis and BTC maxis and Bitcoiners and shitcoiners. I think you have to be a profit maximalist, right? I think there's a who has that as their header on Twitter or as their bio. Is it Luke Martin? Have to be a profit maximalist. So whether it's Bitcoin gaining adoption, whether it's ETH being used, or rather USDC on Ethereum being used, this is all good for crypto, right? This all pushes us further in the right direction. And there are people that honestly think things like this are a sign of the top. I gave a story a while back about my friend who bought into Apple really heavily when he was walking through New York City one day. And this friend of mine actually trades for options for a living. And he was walking through New York City one day, and he said he went long Apple when he noticed about 10 or 20 people walking by him with, you know, their eyes down onto the device that they're holding, which at the time was pretty big. It was an iPod. And as soon as he saw that, and he didn't see a ton of developments in terms of, you know, a ton of advertising. You know, at that point, Apple wasn't all over the place. Yeah, it was a big company, but you know, now it's pretty much a namesake. But it inspired him to go long just on that alone. He sees a bunch of people with this in New York City street, doesn't know anything about them. He sees that they're from all walks of life, right? All different genders, nationalities, you know, but they all are basically in one form or another agreeing that this product has something that is that has something to offer, right? They all had this, and he didn't see this and think that this was a top, right? He didn't see this form of adoption as a top. Instead, he saw it as an early signal. So I think it's important to remember that crypto is essentially tech, and we've all been so involved in it for so long that you know, again, we get very excited about anything with regards to adoption and the furthering of this, but you have to remember this is very new to a lot of people. So I'm really, obviously, this informs the higher time frame bullish case even more. Let me just look through the chat again. Visa and USDC. Yeah, it's not like exciting, right? There's nothing like exciting about it. There's no reason the market should just like rip up from here. I think it's just a small little. It's like water over time will erode a stone, right? Just the small little updates, the little incremental changes and additional adoption overall, I think that that's what is going to lead to a massive shift. I don't know if water eroding a stone was the right idea, but if you have small drops of water dropping on the same sharp spot on a stone over time, it's going to smooth it over, right? If eventually that's going to add up and have a meaningful effect. So it's not massive, but it's not like you're going to see a huge pump. Maybe that was one of the reasons why we had a decent pump today, but all in all, it's a really good positive development. Each piece of news is another straw in the camel. Yeah, that's right. That's right. Okay. Everyone gets bullish at the highs. Yeah, we're going to look at Visa to use USD is not really crypto. USD, yeah, right, but it just brings more of the conversation up. Crypto Sam, it brings more of the conversation up. Oh, what is USDC? Oh, that's it's a cryptocurrency, right? It's a crypto stablecoin. What's a cryptocurrency? What's all this craze? Yada yada yada, and just opening the door up even more. Exactly, all these incremental steps. Okay, so we're gonna take a look at the charts. I am currently in the Phemex trading competition right now. So there are a couple of us that are on my team. So far doing a decent job, right? I think I am, let's see. So we'll go to so if you go to Phemex.trade, again, we're partners with them. You get access to the feeless spot trading. You get access to whatever the promotion that they're running. We're going to be doing a live, I just have to give you guys an update real quick. We're going to be doing a live trading session with Phemex through their YouTube pretty soon. So if we go here and we look at, let's see how we're doing. The desk is our team. I think I'm in first place still. Yeah, I'm still in first place on the team, but only at 37% for the last week of trading, or 4 or 5 days of trading. It's not that impressive compared to some people that are really just going degen full on 100 times leverage. But if you don't trade on Phemex, fastest exchange by TPS by far. But we're going to be doing live trading streams with them. So just to give you guys that update, this is a Coin Analyze. We share this frequently. We're not working with them whatsoever, but I really love this update that they put out. They have all the futures data that you can need that you're interested in by each asset. So if you look at BTC right now, open interest, total open interest change in the last 24 hours. All right, the share of that represents, right, perpetual versus regular futures. I think this is a great platform. Just constantly trying to share platforms with you guys. And this is going to tie in right into what I want to look at right now, which is we did see a pretty substantial increase in open interest off of this move alone. So, we had a pullback already. It is holding the VWAP from the lows of this structure. It is still holding the last structural high that we would have said would have been a target. So if we're looking at, ultimately we're looking at a long out of what I say 56.5, and we were longing up to the first target in mind was right around 57.2. So we already took out these highs, and this is a bullish retest thus far. But one thing to keep in mind is that for this move, we did have a pretty substantial increase in open interest. So open interest over the last 24 hours increased on perpetual swaps just over 7%, total all in all over 8%. And funding did see a pretty big jump right off of that. So right after this, more importantly, this ranging behavior, this sideways behavior, we have seen that funding did increase pretty substantially from previous period of being more or less neutral. So I think the one thing to always consider is that funding is always going to go up in a bull market. It's going to be, you're going to have to normalize it and consider like what are considered, what's considered neutral now, what's considered high now. But this is always something to keep in mind, because after a bullish development, right, after you have, and you can see that funding across the board right now I would say it's on the lower end of positive in comparison to what it has been at some points in this cycle. But on Bybit, it was already over 10 basis points. So you can see that predicted now is showing a slight decrease, and that's probably due to some of this unwinding right here. But overall, all in all, in this move up, we've seen that we've seen a spike in funding. So if we just look at, the behavior from the low to the high, you can see that funding has taken a pretty sharp increase. So that's something to consider, right? Because we always see that as of lately, now that everyone is kind of on the same side, right? It's a bull market. Everyone wants to be long, right? Everyone's looking for the optimal long. Everyone's looking to be early. And the thing is, you're not early unless you're in it before the move started, right? After the move occurs, where you have a move up like this, where you have a move that is just over 6%, you're not really early. You're hoping for continuation at that point. Okay. This very well could pull back all the way back down to, wouldn't want to see it do this, but it could pull back all the way back down to right around 56.5, in the short term, and still not really change much with regards to the local structure. Right? I mean, short term and local structure, such as locally, this trend right here, this higher low, if we retested this high and came back down here, wouldn't really change too much. I think you could still break down even more than we already have and not change too much with regards to the big picture. But the way that this is flagging right now, I think that if you lose this low again, right, and this is where the anchored VWAP is, right around 57.3, now after testing this low, I would ultimately not want to see this low get tested again. So this should hold, otherwise you're probably closing this gap. So if you fall back below, let's look at right around 57.45, 57.4. Just think about this retest right there, which is kind of retesting this previous high. If you fall back below there, chances are that this imbalance is you're gonna see an imbalance move in the opposite direction. So I would look, for a move from, let's say 57.5. At that point, if we start breaking that back down below this low, back down to somewhere around, 56.5. So you have about $1,000 move. Excuse me, I'm drinking some green tea while we're doing this. But locally, everything looks good. It's just this, again, it's a big move, right? Everyone's eyes are on it. You got a good amount of open interest that's behind it in that increase, which is great because, you have to look at the positive and the negative. I don't want to say it's negative, but it would have been a negative if this move up occurred on a drop in open interest, right? Where open interest dropped and that was just, primarily a squeeze. Because from this structure from the left to the right at the lows of that initial breakdown out of that range, right? So this range that we were forming, this inside day structure, from that break, okay, you ultimately had absorption at these lows by some pretty aggressive sellers, rather, or in the face of some pretty aggressive selling. If we just get rid of the open interest now, it'll make it a little bit easier to bunch this stuff up. Spot CVD looking good, get that out of the way. But just from these lows, you had equal lows here, but clearly a higher low in price. So just showing a little bit more selling across the board towards the right side of the structure. Kind of expecting, I guess, the idea was broke outside this range. This is a breakdown. This is a retest. This is probably going to be continuation. So we saw a pickup in selling activity towards the right side of the structure, which does set up, obviously, for a trap when the market starts to see an increase in delta in the opposite direction. So this whole move, was actually fueled by new buyers stepping in, right? So some squeeze down here, but new buyers getting behind this. So it's not like it's thin, right? It's not like this is just the result of a short squeeze. All right. So in terms of the high time frame, just to kind of cap off the local big picture. It sounds funny. Local higher low that we wanted to see that we reclaimed. All right, market had a small consolidation right here around 54, breaks down to 50,000, and now we're back above a previous higher low within this structure. As a whole now, as it stands, this is a higher low in the daily, in the making, right? And with a higher time frame target, I would say, your 60K area is a pretty reasonable target if we maintain this low, right? So if we maintain 55,500 on the higher time frame, and we're keeping support back above this previous level that we lost right here. If I zoom out and give you a more, high resolution view of this, daily level back here, this level down here right around 54 is where you can see most of the interaction ended up occurring within the wicks. But you get this breakdown, and now the market is not only trading back above these lows, but back above that daily low, which is right here. So it just brings in these highs, right, around 60. And then all in all, I think we know what the higher time frame next major target is, which is the all-time high, right? So this looks good on the high time frame. At this point on the high time frame, for me to, start having lower targets, local, to start saying like, hey, we're looking back at 50K, we would have to start breaking back below this daily level, right around 543. And that daily level, right, it's a daily close. It's just a level where a lot of people are going to be agreeing on either progress or lack of progress or a loss of progress. And it does help to look at previous structures within this and see, if there are any patterns of occurrence and reoccurrence that in terms of fractals, or whether things are looking to shape up as they did previously before expansion. And this structure does have a similarity to previous structures before markup. I want to say that this actually, oddly enough, this structure over here reminds me of what took place over here. All right, with the exception, of different context. This was still testing out higher time frame resistances, still much lower prices, a lot more uncertainty here. So it was consolidating against resistance. And what I want to point out is I think that these structures are similar. I don't think that this one might necessarily need to go through this because, again, context is completely different. This is above all-time highs, new all-time highs. This is consolidating at resistance. A lot of still uncertainty in the market. This ultimately had a bullish resolution over time, but it took a while from this test to this sideways action to actually make new highs. Whereas this, it's a possibility that this just marks up from here, and that we actually don't test back below 52, 51K, or rather just back below these lows. So how does everybody feel about BTC right now? Just across the board, just to kind of poll the chat. What's everyone's opinion on the higher time frame? Do you think that we need to come back down and retest some of these lows down here around 51, 52? Do we think that this is good enough and sufficient on its own? How are we feeling about this? Go through the chat. SKL. Buy wink win. It's only okay. Let me help you out by just taking you out of here. There you go. Thanks, Simon Washington. What a name. My name is Simon Washington. Yeah, so how are we feeling about this right now? BTC looks tired, decreasing spot volume and slowing momentum. So I don't know if there's a good argument for decreasing spot volume. Volume doesn't need to do anything drastic right now. I doubt it will come down, but you hope it will. Anything can happen. Best answer. More consolidation between 52 and 60K. Yeah, so let's get back to it real quick. It doesn't have to mark up from here, but it also has to lose some significant levels to be bearish from here, right? So it can move down again, and really the bullish bias, I think, is still intact. Now we're back above. So if we just put on some higher time frame levels, so here's your weekly highest close, the last, before this weekly high. So back above that weekly level, all right? Back above that weekly, which is also a daily level. In terms of the higher time frame, this whole area down here, these lows, whether or not this turns out to be deviation and we move sideways again, we could spend another month within here, and it wouldn't make this bearish. It would actually be all right. You have to, after a long trend, you'd expect to reset and range for a while. But I am leaning more bullish now than I was maybe a couple days ago in maybe the time that it takes to resolve this structure to the upside. I'm leaning more bullish now. We had quarterly futures expire, that whole basis pressure that you'd expect going into it when there's a premium towards the end, when there still is a premium. That's not a priority right now. I don't think that there is, there was a decent reset in terms of funding. So if we look at funding, so let's reset this and put the funding back on. So if we look at funding, funding rate compared to previous structures, where are we? Symbol not found. Oh, I have to go to the right BTC. So aggregated, probably a better thing because it doesn't matter what chart you're on. There we go. If we look at funding, we reset pretty nicely. Actually had, and this is on a 4-hour chart, so you can see it. You had a negative print, and you haven't had one since on the 4-hour, right? It's kind of like, we just see that now. It's convenient to use that for your argument, right, Ryan? But during major lows, what we've seen is that funding has had a pretty precipitous drop. And you had that. There's been a lot of neutral. Funding has been, for the most part, more recently, pretty neutral. Big spike today, but you could wash that out and make away without worrying about that taking off from here. So we did see at local bottoms, that's what happens, right? Local bottoms rather within this trend. You do have a reset in funding. You have more negative pressure. You have more downside pressure rather, and that's what you want to see in a market before, as it's consolidating, as it's building up strength again. I don't think that let's just say, what do I want to say? I don't think, so back to someone said spot volume. Spot volume doesn't, as long as volume is steady. So if we look at, for example, just Bitstamp, we'll go to Coinbase. As long as volume is steady, we're within a range right now. So the only place that really matters with volume is when you're, drastically changing what has been the structure for the last, at this point, going on a month. When you're within a range, if you're looking for either a case to be made for continuation or a reversal, you're looking for volume to come in up here or down here. Because what you're seeing is, all right, so if we're above a high, you brought new market participants in, you're bringing new activity in, there's demand above those highs, and volume coming in, it's, what it's doing is confirming that those levels are interesting to new buyers and to all buyers rather, right? Buyers are willing to do business up here. Volume is just like, if you think about it like an auction, they raise the prices, the volume in the room goes up and continues to follow those higher prices. It's a sign that there's demand. What would be a problem is if you maintain low volume on a breakout, right? So the fact that we're still within a range, volume could kind of just drop off. You're not really doing anything work-wise that really requires much of a change when you're within the structure, especially when you've been even within a tighter structure over the last month, right? So this is, you can kind of look at these highs and these lows as maybe the entirety of this range that we've been in since February, but besides one deviation above that high. But more locally, price isn't really doing much. It's not going to a level where you're going to see a big pickup in interest. And that's what happens when you're within ranges, and when you're kind of like when you establish fair value, that's where people are most agreeing that prices can sit there without doing any kind of extra work. If you start breaking market structure to the downside, right? If you start losing significant daily levels and you see an increase in volume, then that's a bad thing, right? For the opposite reason, because you're seeing, there's an increase in interest to sell this now on the way down, especially if you see selling volume come in, right? But this gets very nuanced, because we could have a break at the low and you have a huge increase in volume, but you end up with a candle like this. Okay, so you get a massive spike in volume, you have a candle like this, and then we're saying, that's absorption because all of this volume came in, but shit, they weren't able to close the candle at the low or even close to it. Instead, buyers bid this up immediately. So that's all very nuanced, but the idea is like volume can really drop off when you're within a range. It's not really required that it does anything above average when you're within that range. You could scale down and apply this concept to smaller ranges too. What are fake outs, right? What are breakouts? Well, breakouts usually come on an increase in volume. So if you have, for example, if you have a range that's formed, one sec. If you have a range that's formed, something like this, and you get something like this, and overall volumes have been going down, well, that's probably a fake out. Versus if you have that breakout, now you're seeing a big influx in volume. It's showing that market participants are supporting the change in that structure. So I wouldn't get too focused on volumes. All right, think about, and this is why we go over TPO and we talk about profile. For example, let me put some of these. Let's just look at my chart real quick. When we look at a structure, one sec. Let me get a nice balanced structure. When we look at a structure like, hasn't been too many perfect days, we've had some tails, we'll just use a more local one. So something like this. So this profile, this value area, this is where buyers and sellers are in most agreement. This is where value had been established through the course of, this is on March 25th. This is not a a hard area to hold within here. You're accepted within here. The change in activity, when we look for a change in volume, when we look for either signs of absorption or acceptance or auction, they need to be outside of these levels, right? Either through the high of the value area high, through the low of the value area low. That's where we look for either a lack of new activity or an increase in well, it sounds confusing because I'm going to say the exact opposite thing. Within the structure, this is where things are accepted, right? That is on a daily level. When we're within a higher time frame structure, that's where things are accepted, right? When we're forming a range, that's where we're accepted. At some point, you establish the high and the low. You've established where things need to really, where you need to see a drastic change, right? At the highs and at the lows, you need to see a big pickup in volume through the high, a big pickup in volume through the low. Otherwise, you're just expecting the range to continue. Not to get too down into that, because I just meant to talk about volume not being that high, but it doesn't need to be. This is all stuff that we go into in a lot more detail on Blockroot. Let me go through some more of your comments real quick, and then we'll go to some other levels. No head and shoulder on the daily. Okay. OBV. I'm not too worried about OBV. It's a good tool, but again, we're within a range. Okay. Yeah, well, I get it, Lucian. Decreasing volume on the weekly. So there could be a case for more of a range, but also don't forget decreasing volume on the weekly on spot markets that are losing a ton of supply. So at some point, the way that it's shaping up, there won't be a lot of Bitcoin on spot exchanges for a ton of volume to transact. So you have to remember that. This is also, as Bitcoin is going up, this is the first time that we're seeing a massive drop-off in availability of supply on the exchanges. And you need the supply to have the volume. So all you're going to have is a little bit left that day traders are trading amongst themselves, basically, and then you might not see drastic amounts of volume transacted because there's not enough available on exchanges. Now that's an extreme case because it's not always going to be that way. At some point, there's going to be a lot of BTC that's deposited to exchanges, and you're going to see a big cash out period. But that's another reason why you could see volumes drop overall. The availability of supply is being taken off exchanges, so you don't want to see a ton of wash volume, and you don't want to see a ton of, otherwise, a lot of volume can come from high frequency trading on the low time frames, but something to always keep in mind. It's not that simple. Is there a TPO profile chart on Phemex? No, there isn't. BTC prices increased significantly in price, but will volume still be behaving the same as it did 10K? Calm before the storm. Is that where we're at? I'm not 100% certain. Let me put back, that's silly because you can't say you're 100% certain about anything. But I would say that there's a few things to pay attention to. On the high time frame, what I like to focus on is, where are we at in terms of borrow? So funding reset. We saw a really nice reset in funding. No major catalyst right now. No major options expiry to get everyone a little hesitant in terms of hitting the long button. With a max pain at 44, right? That's not something that was actually meaningful, but people, if they think it's meaningful, they might act accordingly. New quarter, right, for futures contracts. So not a ton of selling pressure coming in towards the end, towards the end. There is a good amount of upside activity. So we have, we feature Genesis. So Genesis volatility. This is the best options analytics platform there is. So I have to sign in and sign out. This is the email they gave me, so I'm not worried about doxing that. They made me my own account so I could use this. But there's been a pickup in activity in open interest in some of those higher strikes, which is, I think it might be a leading indicator of where the market expects Bitcoin to go and how they're positioning themselves. So if we look at by strike, we saw an increase in those in calls above 60K. So specifically, 62K, There was a big increase at 76, and then there were some even higher around 80K and 100K. And most of your put activity now is a little bit more local. So we don't have anything, much further down from where we are. You have hedging, so you had some of those March 26th puts that were likely carried over, right? Or traders opening positions up in this next expiration. But it looks like there's been an increase in what is the kind of activity you would see when people are expecting higher prices, right? Some of those longer dated, out of the money calls being picked up. So that's something that's positive. I'm expecting that this maybe doesn't range as long as I initially expected. So I think that we could resolve this by the end of April. I think we're at higher prices, put it that way. And it looks like a lot of the market is betting on that, specifically the April options contracts, the end of April. So, so let's look at some charts. So BTC, just to look at this on the low time frame, because I kind of just went over the higher time frame. This type of day right here is a double distribution. So normally this type of day is it would either be a long liquidation structure or a short liquidation structure, and what happens is the market it's fairly balanced out for one period, has a very high conviction move in one direction, and then settles again. A lot of times at the high, a lot of the times the double distribution liquidation structure is on the long side of things, where market starts kind of low conviction and then rolls over and then finds a new area of balance, and you're left with this double distribution type of trending day. And that usually is coupled by a decrease in open interest. A decrease in open interest, right? It's an imbalance structure. You're looking at initially the last single prints to act as resistance. This is a trending day. It's a double distribution, but I wouldn't say it's a short liquidation. Because we saw the increase in open interest in the structure. So I don't think that this is, your fake pop before a major correction, sometimes that you get. Most of the volume now is at the high. We are sitting above daily VWAP. We are sitting above weekly VWAP. We're sitting above yesterday's VWAP, rolling VWAP. Most of the volume is at the high. So for this type of structure, right, if this was on a decrease in open interest and I was expecting this would be a fake out, one of the things I would consider is obviously where do we sit with relation to volume that came in now. We're sitting at the right area in terms of not being in a poor position. So most of the volume for today is isolated to around, one sec, that's Bitstamp. But if we look at Bybit, Coinbase, it is above us. So you want to see that, you regain acceptance above 58. I think that, let me put it this way. If you're long right now, you don't want to see that you lose these single prints, right? Because you're expecting that this imbalance structure maintains that trending type of structure, which is, this is your imbalance leg up. This single print area should act as a support. And these lows are, again, that coincides with the lows I was talking about, where you don't want to lose those, period. Because if you gain acceptance into this gap, you're probably just coming back down. I don't know if I would want to just long this right here, because if you look at it, we are sitting below where most of the volume came in at the high of this range. So ultimately, another long signal might be, if you're trading back above 58.2 now, after this deviation below that low, so range, correction, hold VWAP, right? And now if you're back above where most of the activity came in, then this is probably, a trending move in progress, right? Which ultimately, creates the next leg up. But where it sits right now, I wouldn't want to I don't know if I would want to pre-position for that. It looks good, but if you're not in position right now, I don't think it's like the best setup. You could get into a swing position and say, all right, invalidation is back into this gap, right? Because below these lows, like I said, you're probably moving pretty quickly. Targets above us right now, if we're just looking at sort of the next sticky areas, you have a naked point of control right around, you're looking at right around 59.3. So 59.3, and these 3 days over here, I would say that they are relatively balanced. So even without that, so if we take that off, just get an idea of where most of that composite is. you know, your point of control from that composite is 58.8. So what do we say? 59.3, 58.8. That puts you somewhere around right here to maybe expect some resistance, or above these highs maybe to expect your first kickback. Just because, yeah, you're technically at, you know, we're still at resistance technically, because that level, that whole area right there, that 58.9 to 59.3 level also is basically these daily highs before that roll, right? So just consider that. So maybe you got to move above those highs, but maybe you have a little bit more of a pullback after that. As far as lower time frame setups go, so if you, for example, just to bring this full circle, if we break above now, if we're trading back above the top side of this structure now, after this correction, back above that point of control, sitting above, you know, 58, 58.2, I would look to initially play from this level to that daily, and again, that's a point of control as well. So, so this TPO chart that we're looking at right here, this is Quant Tower. This is the trading platform I use to trade. So it connects to mostly all exchanges, and this is a professional grade trading platform. You can't see on the screen right now, but I have a few other things. I took the ladder off, but normally this would be set up. All right, so I have my ladders. I have all of Binance connected to this right now. You can pull up charts right away, trade right off of them. As you can see, I have the mouse trading set up. So if I want to, for example, I have one with my limit set up, one with my market set up in increments of 100K, and then what I'll do is use either this to scale into a position or this to market into scalps. Right now it's set to a 5-minute time frame. Normally I'll have it set to either a range setting or a tick setting with some type of imbalance candle highlighting so that it shows me where a lot of volume came in. But for example, I can, you know, let's say I want to limit buy. I could write this in right here. So let's say I want to limit buy 58,000. Go ahead and do that, and then just go ahead and set up my orders right from the chart. So it makes it very convenient. Actually, I just limit bought that. So what you have to do is limit buy, and now I have to use my mouse trading to actually click and buy. So this is Quant Tower. I like XO, but they have to offer the same. I know they're going there, so I'm waiting to see how that ends up working out, right? How it compares. I know that they're heading in that direction, but it's not out yet, so I have to use the thing that's ultimately going to let me trade. But yeah, so today, you know, found a new balanced area, have this imbalance structure. It's not the kind of structure I would be really worried about. I would think it would have a higher probability of correcting if this was on air, meaning if like this was a short liquidation, right, and then maybe be a little bit more worried about this trade not being supported by, you know, new interest. But I think that this is bullish so far. And again, I wouldn't want to fall back below, you know, ultimately what we're looking at is you're looking at the single prints that are right around 57K. So I wouldn't want to fall back below there. Otherwise, I think that you're probably, you know, you're coming back down another $700 and you might just range a little bit longer. So, but yeah, Quant Tower has the footprint. It has everything that I need. The DOM. So do you guys have any alts that you want to look at? So let's take a look at some alts. And just to wrap it up, all in all, BTC looks good. I mean, more locally, areas of resistance. This area now, as long as this acts as support, right? If we lose this, this offers some intraday setups, lower time frame setups, right back down here. But technically, I mean, as long as we're holding this resistance as support, you know, it could chop around as much as it wants. It looks good so far. Atom. Solana. Yeah, let's take a look at Sol. Now, Sol and BNB remind me of similar charts in that Sol looks like, BNB looks like it's headed in Sol's direction. So you have this very tight range consolidations on a higher time frame flag. Sol did the same thing, and now Sol with a move above the previous high. Now, I would prefer that you had a little bit more pickup after this. So now ranging again above this high, I'd rather that we immediately started moving up and maybe start establishing a range a little bit higher above this high, right? I'm talking like, this had an expansion, tight flag, and then a little bit more of an expansion. I don't like when you immediately consolidate above what was a pretty, very clearly defined range, and more importantly, a clearly defined all-time high. I don't like when you have that. I'd rather that you get a pretty impulsive move away from there, right? The market is affirming that this is the most, the most important level that's left on the chart. Most of the time stuck down here, but this is the most important level, one of the most important levels. So through it, you want to see that there's a big pickup in activity there. You have a big pickup in activity, right? You have a big pickup in volume, but I would prefer to see that this have left a little bit sooner. Otherwise, this could be a deviation that ends up leading to a more of a range developed. So we'll see. No point in saying that is the case until it becomes a little bit more obvious. Right now, these lows are intact. So have this under and then back over structure, which is good, right? For any retest, it's usually going to be something like that. You get a pullback, you flush that low, and then you're reclaiming the previous low, right? And trapping a good amount of that activity down there. So that looks good. A lot of buying came in here, right? But not a ton of continuation in the short term. So that's just something to be considerate of. Ave. So I would have said, and I think I still would say, on the higher time frame, your weekly structure, your weekly swing lows, very important, right? Daily swing lows, very important. So obviously spending a good amount of time kind of hanging out around this area versus seeing a big response at these lows, right? So weekly, daily level down here, and again, still kind of confined within this, what is so far a diagonal trend line resistance. It's only been tested 2 times, but I think it is relevant. I'm bullish on Ave on the higher time frame, but I think that it was one of the DeFi pairs that had a lot of activity a little too soon, and might be a little bit more crowded than the others. Also, now it's a pretty big market cap. It takes, not big, but it takes a decent amount to move this. In terms of this structure, we successfully held this level, right? Broke through, but now back above the weekly, daily level. So that's good. A third time down here wouldn't make me thrilled. So now if you break back below 300, I think that you're in trouble. But I would assume that many of you, like me, you probably pay a good amount of attention to the total market context, or rather context in general, total market. And if you're seeing that consolidations are leading to expansion, I wouldn't expect Ave to get left behind. But just so far right now, it's not as bullish looking as some of the other larger pairs. Another thing to focus on with BTC as well, so I didn't point this out, but this is a nice breakout in terms of what had been a series of higher highs and lower highs on the way down. So if we just look at this area, remember, what I would say is with trend lines, since you can just be an asshole and conveniently fit them into your bias with the benefit of hindsight, just try to connect the most amount of interactions. An area that has shown meaningful interaction, and now it looks like that has clearly changed the rate of advance to the downside and has moved more sideways than it has previously, right? If anything, it had been moving down over time versus moving sideways. So this is a really good thing to focus on as well. But back to alts. Wi-Fi. Take a look at Wi-Fi. What's looking good? Yeah, I'll look at Wi-Fi in a sec. DOT is something that I am excuse me, little snotty. DOT is looking good. Damn, I don't know. So I said yesterday when I would long dot, so I'm long dot right now. But that's only for a range play. I don't know. Dot on the high time frame, I was in and out of, unfortunately. But dot looks really good either way. Honestly, either way that you put it, just because I'm in an intraday trade doesn't mean anything. Dot reclaiming these lows, right, after being stuck within a range for, excuse me, Jesus, nearly a month. So this breakdown through the low that's reclaimed, I think that ultimately sets a move back up to these highs. So dot looks good. A lot of these higher time frame, large caps have these tight higher time frame consolidations and flags that have formed, and I think that maybe across the market they're setting up for nice moves up in the near future. BNB, same thing. As long as you don't start flirting with these lows again around 200, you should. Happy my wife isn't home. She'd be like telling me like, "What are you doing? All that fucking noise." As long as these lows don't get flirted with again, I think most of these are going to be. The market's really bullish. Honestly, it hasn't changed just because you've had corrections. I think that most of these you could look at others as proxy and say that okay, if most of these are resolving to the upside, then I would expect that what's the chances that this other larger cap is going to do that as well? I'd say that's pretty high. Let's look at Wi-Fi though specifically. Kind of the forgotten one, I feel like. I mean, still back within a range, right? Higher time frame weekly structure. It's not a, it was trending within, but you could see the importance of that level. So this is not really doing a lot for me to say like this looks very bullish. It's still within a range. I mean, even more locally. So I think you need to, I think with Wi-Fi, I would need to see it back above, which, seems like a lot. I would need to see it back above 40, something like 43 to really say, oh yeah, that's clearly making a move much higher. But I haven't seen Wi-Fi on anyone's radar lately. It might be a good thing. A lot of people might be essentially short or underexposed to Wi-Fi, but I don't see a reason why they should be. It's not exactly in the limelight anymore. Okay, algo. Let's see. Someone said something earlier, and I just mentioned this because Kraken, about big buys on Kraken at 51 or 52. I don't think Kraken is where your big players are really operating, honestly. The liquidity there is it's way too illiquid to imagine the big players are they are active on Kraken. Actually, I think I hear my wife outside. They are. I don't think that they're active on Kraken, honestly. This looks. I went over this in a stream yesterday on Blockroot. This looks awesome. You have ultimately on the high time frame. You have it looks like a very nice bottoming structure, right? This nice bowl back above one of the before this major structure, this last high that was put in. So back above that and treating that as support, that's as bullish as it gets besides breaking out above its all-time high, right? Or previous listing, so consolidating at this level and doing so very similar to, similar consolidation to SOL, to BNB in that it's tight, right? I don't think there's too much of a question about which way that this resolves, right? It's retesting this, came down for that second attempt down there. Usually you don't leave an area after just one test, even though we grinded a little bit down here. So a second attempt back down there, and I think that this is probably going to be making an effort towards these highs again. On the high time frame, this is just one big retest of a kind of a gross bottoming structure. I was going to say head and shoulders, right? But inverse head and shoulders. But just think about it like fuck the name. It's just a bottoming structure. What you're seeing is that a big sell-off, really aggressive sell-off, and now with this further aggressive sell-off, the market can't make new lows. So things change from here to here. And things drastically change, obviously, when you're retaking this level of market structure. So this, you know, I remember in 2017, 2018, looking at charts like this and thinking like, wow, they put in big moves already. Like what more can happen? And then the truth is, like, you had like 6 months later, this portion of the chart was like all the way down here, and it was completely irrelevant, and price went on to do a lot more. So this could very well be, in terms of the higher time frame, as a swing signal on a weekly or daily, pretty valid, right? Good reason to maybe, for myself, to tack on a position. I didn't tag Link in my tweet. No, I didn't tag Link. So I tagged BTC and ETH, right? Because we're going over ETH. We went over BTC, but we're going over ETH. Is there a link somewhere in? No, there's no link. But let's go over ETH anyway. Okay. So ETH right now kind of reminds me of the same way I said that BTC looks similar back here. ETH looks like it's in a similar period, right? But totally different context, which makes me think that it doesn't need to go through a much longer consolidation period. And now you have a higher low in the daily, very clean levels as far as your highs, like nothing has changed with regard to them. So what this looks like is, it looks like it's consolidating against resistance around, around that 2K level. So it looks like it's rather making an effort to consolidate against that level. If you have something like this, right, a very obvious static high, right, but the lows are changing and grinding up over time, I think you can expect that this is probably going to be marking up. This looks right now, right, if we just look at this locally, so from this previous daily range, right, so you have from March 9th all the way to March 21st, stuck within a range, unable to close outside but for 1 day, right? So you have a deviation right here. So from an intraday standpoint, this very well was a good long opportunity, right? Because what you're ultimately looking at is, this was an area where price was very accepted, right? So what you would be looking at when you're regaining acceptance into this level is a play from the low to the high. So I think that ETH is on its way back up to 19. And whether or not we continue to range between these points again, I'd say that there's probably a high probability we do that. Maybe we sweep these highs up here and then have a pullback. And as long as we hold the lows of this structure, I think that this looks really good. Yeah, you might have hallucinated it, Arian. But just in case yeah, like, I don't ask for likes and subscribers because, for just shits and giggles. A lot of stuff is, we want to be one of the premier crypto what's it called, channels, right? So a lot of the if I tag something, it's because, yeah, and what I'm saying is, you actually would be right in that train of thought. If I'm tagging something, I'm going to tag things that are going to filter, rather, target the crypto space, right? So, if I'm tagging BTC, I feel like I'm targeting the crypto space. Tagging ETH, targeting the crypto space. Link, I've shared many link charts before, so a lot of times if you did ever see me share a link, right, or hashtag or whatever you call it, hashtag, it was because I was going over link, but not during this one. I don't think link looks really interesting, honestly, right now. All right, so let's look at Shroom real quick. So Shroom has some announcements. SFP, I'll look at that too. Shroom has an announcement coming up. I know they've had a lot of those lately, announcements of announcements. But the one thing that I would want to focus on with Shroom is that this is one of the tightest consolidations in a DeFi, Uniswap pair that's not on any exchanges, that is thin, right, or rather was thinner, that had a big run up. This is one of the tightest consolidations. After a 3-drive structure above, previous all-time highs, a lot of pairs that are similar to this in that kind of profile, meaning fall in that kind of category. Fuck, why does the hotkey keep pulling that up? Had way more of a pullback, right? Had like a blow off top and then a much deeper pullback. Shroom has kept it high and tight for the last 2 weeks. And you could just basically see that at these lows, it's like someone is using wrapped ETH on 1 inch to get in with this with a limit order at these lows and just consistently defending this. And this is, okay, so great example in volume, right? Volume wasn't doing anything special during here, and this led to markup, right? So this led to this new high up here. Volume didn't need to do anything crazy within here. Notice how volume dropped off. Okay. Volume matters through the level. Okay. So through the level, you want to see a big increase in volume. Okay. So not only that, but are we able to close at the highs? So if you have a big candle like this through the level, how the candle closes is important. If you have something like this and you have that big ass spike in volume, well, shit, that's really bad. That means that all that buying just got absorbed, right? But these are strong moves through, right, on a 4-hour structure. So that is, this looks like it is onwards and upwards. I would say you're probably going to see a $1.50 pretty soon. And this is before the announcement, so this is someone front running. And all of this activity, again, no breakdown at all. This was probably the tightest, and I have a big position in Shroom, so like I know that I'm biased, but that being said, like just call a spade a spade. This structure was so tight, right? If you look at it on the daily, I mean, what are we looking at? And you're gonna have a high range because it's an alt, but from the highest close to the lowest close, 25% in an alt in a thin DeFi pair. Like, I mean, we could pull up, just pick up a random pair, and you've had much more substantial pullbacks across the board. SFP, what is that? Swing failure pattern? SFP? SFP, okay, here we go. Nice structure. This kind of reminds me of maybe a way that, no. I mean, I went over my whole reasoning behind Ray and how I'm feeling about it right now. But this, let's see. When you look at structures like this, I think that it's all about timing, because if you have a chart like this, this looks like a big gap, right? If this is if price is doing this right now, back below, let's say that this weekly high is closed, and it's somewhere down here, and the rest of the market is not looking too good, then I'm a lot more worried. If the market's picking up speed again, then maybe price can leave without testing these lows again. This right now, above a weekly level, daily structure is looking good, right? So if you look at maybe just consider where most of the activity has been within here. It's still been within this range though, right? So you have a pretty clearly defined range with, I would say, a pretty clearly defined midpoint. So lows, breakdown, retest, retest, retest upon breaking above, pull back to this general area. So this is the meat of the structure for this range, all right? But I would still want to see that price breaks above. You know, I don't want to say I would want to see, because like every time I talk about charts, if you guys ask them, it's as if I'm going to be getting into them. If I was looking to long this, I personally, you know, I wouldn't have a hard time longing it if it broke above this high. I would look at this like, all right, so this is your bottoming, even though it's the beginning at a top. This is your flagging structure, and this is clearly acceptance through the only range we have. You know, and 350 probably leads to a pretty decent move with some follow through, right? Because this is, you know, if this was at a bottom, same idea, right? It just happens to be, it looks a little bit more sketchy because it's so new, and a lot of times new structures, new charts, new assets, they need to have like a prolonged period of reaccumulation, because you have a lot of late people involved. So yeah, so I mean, that looks good because it has, when I say things look good, I usually, you know, I'm saying it has a clean structure, like clean invalidations. You know, if you're above here and you're saying that this is your breakout trade, invalidation is back down here, right? Somewhere back down within here. Another good trade for me would be, hey, let's say this came down here, retested this daily level, right? And then reclaimed it really bullishly. And then I'm looking at plays back up to these levels. So looks good. Let's see. Okay. G-Swap. I think G-Swap and Shroom they go hand in hand. I don't know why, you know, I took some off of Shroom with the intention of balancing out between G Swap and Shroom, but for some reason I just think that Shroom is more bullish. I don't know. I've been in it from the start. I had a bigger position. Maybe it's my psychology of wanting to maintain a very big position. But this looks great as well, right? It's doing the same thing. It's just a little bit later, a little bit more resistance up there, a little bit more rejection than Shroom. Shroom just looks a lot cleaner. They are related, so one will benefit from the other, but in terms of strength and weakness, I think that this is relatively weaker compared to Shroom. It's still within its range, right? At least, though, the benefit of the doubt is it's later, and it's not weaker necessarily in the sense that it's doing anything to the downside. It's just weaker in that it's not moving as much. But nevertheless, it is holding previous structures, but it hasn't put in, I would say, the same type of upside activity that Shroom has. Or maybe it just looks different, right? It might as well have done that in percentage terms. I don't really necessarily know. I haven't considered that, but it might have. But it's just it's showing a little bit more reluctance to make new highs. So looks good though, because it hasn't changed with regards to any downside activity. This low is still holding, and it's still clean like Shroom was. It's just not seeing as you're seeing. I think maybe more supply in GSwap. So KPAD, I got to go to like PooCoin or something, right? It's absolutely ridiculous. No, so we got to go to PooCoin. This is so fucking stupid. The third thing's named PooCoin. And then we got to go to CoinGecko and get the address. Just as a heads up, I am very long KPAD. Very, very long KPAD. I do think that it pulls back, though. So I do think it pulls back. Come on. What's going on? Oh, where did that go? Oh, what was that? Oh, I just picked the first thing that popped up. Hold on one sec. Absent-minded. So with KPAD and the same thing like my argument with Ray and even just looking at that last chart, which was, what was that, SFP, these really new charts, very rarely you're going to see something that just continues up without a big correction, because what happens is with a new chart like this, you might have a good amount of upside activity from here, maybe a 1x, a 2x, but rather 2x. The thing is, there's a lot of pre-sale. There's a lot of early seed investors. They get some of their supply released, so maybe they're taking a little bit of profit, maybe not. And then right after the listing, you get people that got in early. They're still in good position, but you're getting a lot of people that are looking at this, and just because it's newly listed, they're thinking that it's like the beginning, it's the bottom. And so what they are is they're like the last momentum traders of the first momentum that came into the chart. So talking about people that are getting involved up here, people that are getting involved up here, the first thing that happens is, like, if you're looking at this chart right now, for example, just put this on like a 1 hour and expand it a little bit. If I'm looking at this, I feel like, hey, maybe it's like ranging right between here. This is a range, right? This is the trend. This is the range it begins. So, I'm long because I think that this has, a lot more upside. And as long as these lows don't break, like, it's intact. Well, there's no reason why those lows can't break in the short term and it still be a very big long in the long term. So if anyone's getting involved now and they're saying, all right, this is my area, they're kind of late compared to a lot of people that are still in the market, right? That might be looking to take profit up slightly higher. They are in better position than people that are long up here expecting immediate continuation. So what happens is, the market now has some top-sidedness to it. So if you pull back, these people are underwater. Any type of advance toward this level, it still has profit taking from people that are down here, right? It still has early seed profit taking. So it starts to make it roll over a little bit more. And then once you start losing one of the main inflection points on the chart, like one of the only ones, like this low, then you have all these people reconsider that are slightly better positioned than late participants, but still late. So the market breaks down. When it rallies back up to their point, they're thinking, you know what? I'll wait. I'll wait till I'll get out at break even. They sell here. Market breaks down some more. you have these participants that are thinking, all right, so market's going to pull back a little bit more. Let me take profit. Early seed investors still sitting at a really nice cost basis. They're thinking, I'm going to take profit. You just have a lot of selling pressure that is in these new charts, right? Because of all the early access. So if I see something like this, I'm very bullish on the high time frame, but I can't say like, oh, it's just a long from here on. A lot of the times I want to see, and things like SRM and Solana did this, where if you look on like the first couple days, it kind of looked like it was just going to be up and up from there, right? But then you had like a multi-month period of reaccumulation because you have so many. The thing is like, and this is what I think this drives the point home even more. All the people, all this selling down here, you might think like, why the fuck would anyone sell? That's the bottom. There are people that have a cost basis all the way down here. So they could sell up here and still be up 300x. So you have to work out a lot of that selling pressure. So if you look at something like KPAD, this period very well could be this period right here. You know, where I said you might have some upside, and you know, it might give you another 2x, but then you have to put in like a reaccumulation period. You have to have a reset, even though it just started. Just because you have people that have early access to these pairs. Now, context is king. So imagine this occurring in a period of maybe a period where the market is pulling back as a whole is different than if that's occurring when the whole market is like everything is a great opportunity, everything is a long. So if, you know, let's say that this could be a different context, right? Like if we look back at September 2008, for SRM and for Sol, we go back to BTC, you know, it's still like we're going back to a period where the market is still in not a very tremendously bullish state. So this was a long time ago. So very well could be that some of the newer pairs like Ray, some of the newer pairs like KPAD, they are just walking into kind of the perfect environment to where there are just new people coming to the market and looking to long things. So that's something that I would consider. But again, I am very long KPAD, and I don't really have any reason to monitor this actually, because I think that this is going to be going up over the next couple months, more than a couple months, next year. And I am one of those people actually that has a really attractive cost basis to where I could sell some of my KPAD and I'm tremendously up, but I actually don't think I don't see a reason to sell all of it. I'd rather just let it ride. Like it's in such profit already that it doesn't make sense for me. Like I'd rather just I don't want to take profit now for what multiple that I'm at and then look at it in 6 months and be like, holy shit, what the hell did I do? So all these things are worth considering, I would say. There's a lot of obviously things to consider. You don't want to get into a state of analysis paralysis, but it's the same concept. I was going over Ray. This could very well be like a W bottom at the beginning, right? Or a flag at the beginning. I think it all matters on what BTC and ETH do from here. So if BTC and ETH go on to extend, and the market starts ripping again, and you know Bitcoin making new highs after a major correction, I think that puts it front and center again. You have maybe new retail activity, you know, a reshuffling. Yeah, so if the market is kind of up on the up and up, I would say, then maybe it benefits from that. It doesn't have to go through that prolonged correction. So I think anything else? Let's see, I'll go through maybe one or two others. Let's see. So Solana looks good. I think a lot of the leaders are showing that they have a tremendous amount of resolve. So, I mean, Sushi, decent correction. Uniswap, decent correction. These could very well be putting in their major correction before the next major leg up. I think they were probably doing that. So with Sushi, with Uniswap, it's a good chance that these prices might be short-lived. Right? You had big consolidation, markup, breakdown, and as long as these lows hold, as long as like, you know, you're not falling back into the leg of the trend before all this, I think you're good. So anywhere at these lows or closer to these lows is a better area to find risk, than per se buying at the highs. So all of these are starting to look a lot better. I got to look at my dot position. Bancor, let's see. I mean, technically holding this daily level back at this weekly level, right? So in terms of the structure, you want to see that this level holds. And so far it's doing its job. So far doing its job. So this is, can't say anything negative about it yet. This is the area you would want to see tested. Decent pullback off the high. I mean, what is this? We're looking at from the high to this pullback, 30%, kind of in that nice territory. With alts, it's like 30 to, it could be 30 to 70%. But so far, I would look for lows to develop right around this 650 level. And you just want to see that hold. That's a requirement, I would say. I'm not in this at all, but if I was in this, like, I need to have this low hold now, because if not, it's falling back within this prior consolidation, and then you're at least looking back down to around low fives. So, missed the start today, Adam. Yeah, we'll take a look at Adam, and then one more, and then we'll wrap it up. Cosmos. Let's put on a long-term chart. Kind of looks like a really dirty dot. Let me put on a better chart, because maybe that's just due to said dot, and then I entered in dot. Might not be. There we go. And I say it looked like dot because it lost the range low and now reclaimed. So I would say that it's reasonable to say that this is your range high, range low. This is the first really significant low in the chart. Right, on the way up, you lost this structure, put in a big low. So now that this has reclaimed that low, let's see what this is on the weekly. So that's a weekly low as well. So weekly low, daily low, now reclaim back within this prior range. I think that you can expect that this probably retests this 22 area. So it's kind of, I mean, it's already most of the way there. As far as this keeping its structure on the higher time frame, it's doing a really good job of that, right? Multiple tests at this low, probe below the low, reclaim above that weekly, daily level, and that's really the biggest requirement right now. So the closer we are to the low, the better you can define a position. But these lows must hold, right? Because this is just one imbalance move on the way up that took place over a very short amount of time. So if you fell back below something like 1650, I mean, you're probably looking right around this little brief consolidation as maybe a bounce on the way down, but I wouldn't expect too much between that and back around 10. So, all right, so one more. I'll look at FIDA, the guy who asked if I put a link in the link for engagement, even though we didn't even have a link. He was too busy taking shrooms. That was my attempt at a drum roll. One of those, what are those things that they, after a joke, those, what are those? Cymbals? Not a drum player, not a musician by any means. So daily level, weekly low now around 168. I mean, shit. So that was a quick move and then recovery. If I look at the structure like this, I mean, I have to zoom out and get a better view because that doesn't tell much because it leaves out a lot. This is still, it's a ranging structure, right? I think more importantly, it's just important to know what kind of conditions you're in. Are you in ranging or trending conditions? Does it have to be a perfect looking structure on a daily or weekly chart? Everything lines up? No. You just zoom out and look what has price been doing. Has it been spending most of its time moving between the first significant high and significant low? Has it done much to leave that area? Has it spent most of its time consolidating within? I'd say that it has. So, the most meaningful area on this chart now is back above this 190 level. This is kind of like your deviation. This was your support test, failed, breakdown, retest this general sort of 180, 190 level. And now if you see that, for example, we break above here and we're treating this as support, then this is probably beginning its next trending leg. Right now, closer to resistance, though, arguably, than it is to support, right? Even if you look at this daily up here, as, looking at that as the daily swing high, which it is, right? Highest daily close. So it is closer to all resistances than it is to any support, right? Unless you really start refining this down to the low time frames and say, like, oh, this was a, little range low, this little brief period that we had for 2 days, retest, breakdown, now this is acceptance back within, but still, it still pulls you back up to this area being your target. On the high time frame, though, it looks good, right? Because you have, it's not pretty, but major lows intact, higher low in the making, right? Higher high still. So as long as you don't start making any kind of drastic moves back down towards this low after putting in a high, I wouldn't get really worried. Don't know anything about this, but it looks good. It just like all things had a big move up, and now it's having its larger consolidation, which is to be expected. All right, guys, that is going to be it. I'm just messing with the area, and I'm not being serious. That's going to be it. Just to recap it, alts are not really my thing. I punt a lot of things, but mostly BTC. BTC looks like it's having some trouble. So keep in mind, from a low time frame standpoint, if you start falling back below these lows into that single print, you're probably, and especially from this anchored VWAP, so right below, which is now at 57.4 area. If you start falling back below that, you're probably coming back down to retest these highs. So right around back at so about a $1,000 move back down to 56.5. In terms of this on the high time frame, this daily level, this whole area back down here is game for support. So things I wouldn't want to see for BTC is gaining acceptance back below 55. Technically speaking, and that's just from just locally, technically speaking, this is a daily higher low in the making around 50,000. Some more important levels through here. You can see that there's a good amount of confluence between this $53,000 level and right around 53.5. So there's a bunch, the idea is there's a bunch of areas that could act as support, and that very well we could expect that we might revisit, because maybe this doesn't just make a strong move up right from here. Maybe we do have some more ranging to work out. And I think, just as a reminder, the range could still very well, as long as we are not making new lows back below 45K, I would not be worried. Like, honestly, if we move up from here, ultimately, I think maybe I'm going to say, I don't want to say 54. 45 defines from high to low. This is deviation, but I wouldn't want to see that we fall back below 50. Could this area be revisited again? But would that be fucking ugly? Yes. So I wouldn't want to see that. So if anything, for BTC on the high time frame, I want to see that this more recent daily swing low is held. This is the daily swing low that led to a move back within this local low. So that structure being an area where there was a flip. So again, looking at it on the 4-hour time frame. So this let me put a line there so I could clean this up. So back. Oh, did I already have a line on there? Yeah, I wouldn't ultimately want to see us fall back below 50. It's entirely possible we come and start messing around with these levels again, though. I mean, you have this level down here that has been retested. Could this get retested again? Yes. I wouldn't be too happy if we started falling below there. You know, that I would have a target at that point of 45K. I don't know how I would feel, honestly, going into that. So, all right, guys, that is it. We're about an hour and a half into this. Yeah, as long as I would say on the high time frame for this play, as long as 56.5 level holds, maybe this chops around, then I think that we're probably going to be testing 60 in the near future. So that's that, guys. I got to end this. I need something to eat. I need something to drink. I'll talk to you soon.